House will vote on legislation to pressure China into raising the value of its currency. But that's not the only dispute affecting China. The U.S. and other major economies. The United Steelworkers complain that China is using practices in developing its alternative energy sector that thwart the same industry in the U.S. In Japan, automakers are upset that China has halted shipments of rare minerals used to produce hybrid vehicles. Joining us now to talk about all of these issues is Michael Liebreich. He is the CEO of Bloomberg New Energy Finance. Michael, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. Let's just quickly get straight who you are and your company. You started this company. It's now a unit of Bloomberg, and you provide data and research to alternative energy or new energy producers.
Well, also to investors and to governments. So that's right. It was an independent company. I founded it 6 years ago. At the end of last year, it was bought by Bloomberg.
So it's interesting that trade disputes and currency values could have an effect on the production of alternative energy, but they really are tied closely together here.
They're tied very closely together. The background to this is that this industry has been identified around the world as one of the drivers of growth going forwards. The world is shifting from high carbon energy to lower carbon, and so it's a growth area. And what's happening is there's a lot of tensions around it because countries around the world are all trying to spur the growth of this industry at the same time. So it plays against this backdrop of the yuan dispute.
Michael, be more specific in terms of what Chinese doing, the Chinese officials or China as a country is doing that's going to threaten the development of alternative energy kind of around in the United States or really globally.
Well, as I said, every country is doing these things, but China has been very successful at becoming the supplier of particularly cheap solar panels. So you've got to see this in the context of all these stimulus programs where governments are pushing money into clean energy to jumpstart growth after the financial crisis, the recession, and a lot of that money is going to China because they make the cheapest solar panels. And they're supporting that with cheap debt, with a sort of industrial policy that really focuses on not just solar, but all of these sectors to grow it as quickly as possible.
Is that China's problem, or is that the U.S.'s problem, that maybe U.S. officials need to rethink their policy when it comes to energy and alternative energy specifically?
Well, we'll find out in the course of time as to, is anything they're doing actually infringing WTO rules? That we don't know. I'm not going to say one way or the other. But every country pretty much has got a strategy, and then China's is the most aggressive, and so it's drawing the most fire right now.
Well, and you say, I mean, beyond the value of the currency, because that affects trade at all levels, there's specific legislation or specific moves that China is making to sort of slow down everyone else's production of these things, and that's that it's got access to rare earth minerals that it is not exporting.
Well, that's the one that really does worry me because, China gives cheap debt to its manufacturers. Well, guess what? So do we. So does the U.S. So does everybody. But these rare earth minerals are a constrained resource. Some enormous proportion, 90% around the world, is actually being produced in China. And they are necessary for the batteries that go into hybrid vehicles, electric vehicles. They're necessary for the permanent magnets, which are needed in wind turbines and so on. So without the access to those rare earth minerals, it's going to be very difficult to grow a domestic manufacturing base. So that's the one that does really worry me.
Now, do they have a reason? I mean, they're using guided missiles as well. So is it a defense reason? Is that what China's claiming?
No, I mean, at the moment, for instance, they're restricting the export of these minerals to Japan because of the dispute over this fishing boat that went across the national borders. So I don't think that there needs to be a reason, a defense reason. It is just being used as a trade weapon.
I mean, Michael, do you really think China's going to play hardball longer term? I mean, we talked yesterday about relationships between the U.S. and China and saying that they're really mutually, they need each other. The U.S. needs the Chinese need the United States. I mean, do you really think China's going to play hardball when it comes to the minerals and other areas when it comes to alternative energy?
I don't think so, because the bottom line in terms of clean energy is what does the industry really have to do? It has to push down its costs.
Right.
And the way you do that is by making sure that everywhere around the world, everybody does what they're good at. So research, manufacturing, the right resources, the natural resources. So if we get into a tit-for-tat trade war in clean energy, the industry's going nowhere. So really,
and you don't think that's going to happen?
So I don't think that's going to happen, because I think there'll be an outbreak of sort of common sense, and usually these things get resolved.
That's great optimism. Thanks so much for joining us, Michael. Hope we can get you back on and talk more about this. Michael Liebreich from Bloomberg New Energy Finance. We're going to take a quick break.